Go live.
We are, sir.
Okay. No, I just got an error message on the program. It's okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Candid Frank. He's Aaron William Freeland. This is Friday, the day before hockey night in Canada. We love to talk about the Leafs before they play. For those of you that have been watching the show and watching the Leafs, it's really been literally up and down, up and down, up and down. But it's been a very interesting season. It's gotten so interesting. I think, Aaron, it's safe to say that this Maple Leaf team gives you a lot to think about.
They certainly do. It's one of those things where you're never quite sure what to make of them. Some days they're incredible, other days they're borderline, some days they're just downright horrid. They've won three in a row after having lost three in a row, after having won three in a row, after having lost three in a row, after having won five in a row. So
They need to win five in a row again to get out of that rut.
it would be nice. Don't get me wrong. We're currently sitting at 68 points in second place in the Atlantic Division behind the Florida Panthers. Now, we've got 2 games in hand on the Panthers, so that's a good thing for us. They're sitting at 69 points, but we're a goodly sight behind the Washington Capitals in the Eastern Division. Tied with Carolina, but ahead of the New Jersey Devils. And we're, comfortably ensconced in about the middle of the league. As it currently stands, we're actually about 7th out of all the top teams. So that's not a bad position to be in, considering where we are in the season. But I'd like to see us doing a little bit better.
They had a defenseman score a goal.
Finally. I believe it was his first goal since 2022.
That sounds terrible, but it's only been 26 games.
Well, for him, yeah. For the rest of us, in fan years, it's been.
Yeah, for him, it's his first goal in 26 games, which for a defenseman isn't that big a crime. The one thing that people are concerned about, and admittedly so, is the fact that Morgan Rielly hasn't been doing what he's expected to do. His salary spoke to a 1A defenseman, right? But I think we have arrived at a point where I think it's safe to say that if he's number 3, that's given him some generosity, because there's no doubt that McCabe and who else are the top pair.
Honestly, at this point, sure. Yeah, that's really the way that it's looking. I mean, Rielly and OEL, they're a decent pairing, but McCabe and Tanev are technically speaking one. Simone Benoit and Philippe Myers are a distant 5 and 6, but Rielly and OEL at this point are a solid 3-4, not the 1 and 2 that they're played off to be. Now, there are some baked-in excuses for Rielly's performance so far this year. He's just had a child, so that is something that is potentially weighing on him with this sort of thing. But at the same time, that excuse only goes so far.
Is he playing without the weight of the world on him now? Is he getting better? And I don't see him being in the last couple of games laboring as much as I saw him earlier.
In that regard, he doesn't seem to be laboring as much. I'm sure the home assistant captaincy does weigh on him a little bit, but at the same time, at this point in the season, you would have expected that he'd have a little bit more than what he currently has. I mean, he's sitting at, he's sitting at 5 goals and 20 assists for 25 points so far in the season. It's just one of those things where you'd like to see him perhaps doing a little bit more.
But, they took the C away from a pretty good player. Tavares is a pretty good player. He's a great leader. They took the C away from him. I truly believe it's time for him to wrestle the A off him and put it on Tanev's jersey. I just think it'll help him like it helped. You have to admit, we all have to admit, that I don't think it's been a bad thing that Tavares doesn't have the C anymore. He seems to be playing with a little more relaxed. Not that he doesn't have the intensity that he's accustomed to. One thing's for sure, it hasn't hurt his play. And I don't think I don't think the weight of being I think that's a little too much for him. For Riley, they should give him a break from that because there's an emotional thing attached to it. And I know it'll seem like an insult, but I think also it may seem like an insult at first, but I think once it settles in, just like it did with Tavares, he gets a chance to be his own player and do what he has to do to be a better player.
Oh, 100%. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I've always been of the opinion that not everybody's cut out to be a captain. Not everybody's cut out to be an assistant. You need to unencumber some of your players of that sort of saddle, that sort of weight. You know, John without the A would be free to just play. There's no leadership that's expected of him. That he doesn't have to talk to the referees. He doesn't have to rally the troops. He can just put his head down and do what he does best. You know, and he's in the last year of his contract right now. He will be an unrestricted free agent again come the spring. Once the Leafs are done with the third round of the playoffs, he'll be free to go where he wants and do what he wants. I just think they need to kind of unfetter him at this point. So.
Well, it's too early to talk about re-signing him, but I don't. If he gives a real team discount, if he really gives the team a discount, the Leafs would be silly not to engage him. You know, he can be a very big asset to the Leafs at a good price, and I don't see it being a bad thing for either of them. Is I know he's had some problems with you know, Revenue Canada, as you know, it's common knowledge that there's some tax issues that he's fighting, which I can't blame him. And also it basically is one of the burdens of playing for a Canadian team and being involved in taxes that you get in Ontario and the country here in Canada. So, you know, he has some additional challenges being a Maple Leaf. So he really would have to sacrifice a bit. He could go somewhere. He could go to Florida, take his family and spend time in the sun. You know, he could do that just like a lot of players have done. You know, he can go to places where the off ice stuff is a lot less distracting. But we'll see what he does. What we do see right now is we're seeing him play a really good game during the regular season, Aaron. And this is the same thing for Marner, the same thing for him. These are guys that the Leafs shouldn't worry about signing a contract before the playoffs. After the playoffs, if they do really, really well, that means the Leafs are going to do really, really well, and it wouldn't be too bad an idea to pay them.
Oh, 100%. You know, and you've got to get through all of this first, and that's there's a lot of noise, and there's going to be a lot of foo-for-raw made about, you know, who hasn't signed yet, why haven't they offered them a deal, does the team no longer love them? News out of Toronto is get the playing done first. Let your actions during the season speak for you. And at the end of the day, when everything is finally said and done, you'll be in a better position to negotiate.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about the Leafs Marner. So he's the third fastest active NHLer to reach 500 assists. And there's only two players in his class. I don't think they're too bad either. I think they're pretty good players.
Yeah, it's not bad company to be in. That is definitely for sure. You know, and while Philippe Myers got his first NHL goal in 812 days, he doesn't get to keep that puck because that goes to Mitch Marner. Marner has got his 500th helper, putting him behind Connor McDavid, who reached it at 527 games, and Sidney Crosby, who reached 500 assists in 554 games. Marner did it in 629. It's a great run. It's absolutely fantastic that he's been collecting assists at the clip of almost 85%, almost one per game, which is pretty hefty. But he's also the fastest player in Maple Leafs history to reach the 500 assist milestone. Now, they asked him about it, and he said, you know, I don't really want solo achievements in this league. I'm more about winning the Stanley Cup. So while it's great that I've got this, I'm probably going to go home, have a nap, and forget about it. So
Well,
I appreciate that attitude.
We'll find out if the actions equal the conversation when the playoffs roll around, because at the end of the day, that's where the rubber's hitting the road now. The Leafs have done a lot of, in this iteration of the Maple Leafs, the Leafs have paid a lot of players for the possibility of them winning a cup. They haven't paid any of these players for winning a cup. And that's what I'm saying, as far as they can sit on their contracts. And if Marner proves to be a reason why the Leafs win the cup, he's going to make a lot of money. If Tavares is part of that, the home team discount is going to be a lot less. So it'll be something that got a counselor calling me. I hope it's important. Because I'm hanging up on him. Anyway, so that's basically where we're at.
Yeah, and Coach Berube said that obviously Mitch is one of those players that can do it all. It's a great accomplishment for him, and they're very happy. But the ultimate goal here is to win the Stanley Cup. And Marner's had the advantage of playing with some really good players. He's currently lining up with John Tavares and William Nylander. He spent some time on Austin Matthews' wing. It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out from here. But I am glad to see that Mitchie has been trying to take advantage of that sort of thing.
Absolutely. Mitch Marner, a star by anybody's standard. Now he's made it known that he's into the Stanley Cup. That's what he's looking for, and he's going to have an opportunity. I think the Leafs, I'm not saying they're cooled out and into the playoffs, because they really aren't. There's plenty of time for the teams that aren't in the playoffs in the Atlantic Division to catch Toronto and even pass them. So that is going to be, well, it's going to remain to be seen. Let's talk about the Leafs playing the Canucks. The Canucks did a number on the Leafs last time they were together.
Yeah, that was one of those games that you never wanted to see happen. But the Leafs did get shut out 3-0. They are going to be going back into Vancouver on Saturday. The game is going to be at 4 p.m. Pacific. So there, of course, have been the usual gripes about the league catering to Toronto and what have you. But you're going to be seeing William Nylander up against Jake DeBrusk. Mitch Marner matching up against Quinn Hughes if he's back in the lineup. We're hoping he is. And it looks like Joseph Woll is going to be getting the start in front of Kevin Lankinen. So you've got one goalie, Joseph Woll, with a .909 save percentage and a .267 goals against average. And Kevin Lankinen on the other side of the coin with a .904 save percentage and a 2.57 goals against average. As it currently stands, Timmins, Dewar, and Hakanpää are out for the Maple Leafs. Quinn Hughes is currently listed as the only player that's out for Vancouver. He's currently listed as day-to-day. Now, interesting fuel to this fire, Jake DeBrusk, formerly a member of the Bruins, has also indicated that, the last time he played with the Bruins, they were really hoping to get the Toronto Maple Leafs in the playoffs. We're hoping to see if the Leafs can develop some animus towards him and bring it to this game as well.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about the Leafs. They're almost back to full strength, and we saw Stolarz do what he's done since he's been here. Steady. He looked like the injuries behind him. There weren't any signs that the injuries nagging him or in any way. He looked mobile. He looked quick, and he was very effective and really was a big part of Leafs winning that game last night.
Yeah, he walked out of that game with a .933 save percentage and a 1.87 goals against average. His record so far in the past 10 has been 3-2-0. He's going to be, like I mentioned before, it actually looks like Woll is going to be given the start over Stolarz this time around, but I'm not too upset with that. Woll himself is rocking a rocking a .909. So the goalie matchup should be interesting in that regard. We also have the 10th ranked power play in the Maple Leafs going up against the 13th ranked power play in Vancouver. and the 14th penalty kill. That's the Leafs going up against the 12th ranked penalty kill in Vancouver as well.
Absolutely.
So we'll see where it goes from here.
Absolutely. Let's talk about our other favorite sport and our other favorite league, the Canadian Football League, and we'll start with the Lions. They make a signing.
Yeah, they signed offensive lineman Michael Couture to a 1-year extension. Now, he was eligible for free agency on February 11th. The Burnaby native is returning for his third season in black and orange after starting 12 games in 2024, plus the Western semifinal at center. Couture and the offensive line helped stand back rush for a career high of 1,175 yards, while Nathan Rourke and Vernon Adams combined for 5 games of over 300 passing yards. He originally signed with his hometown team as a free agent ahead of 2023 and made 20 starts at center, including the playoffs. That year, the offense finished in the top 3 in most major statistical categories. He was originally picked in round 2, 10th overall by Winnipeg in the 2016 draft, played 93 games with the Blue Bombers. So them getting him back on the offensive line is a big get for them. Very happy to see him back in the orange and black.
National linebacker goes to Hamilton.
Yeah. Now, are we looking at Trevor Hoyt? I believe that's
Trevor Hoyt, and they got Deshaun Amos, and I'll talk to you about the Argos when you do those two Hamilton signings.
All right. So the Hamilton Tiger Cats have announced that they've extended linebacker Trevor Hoyt, who was scheduled to become a free agent. Hoyt played all 18 games for the Ticats last season, including 6 starts at linebacker. He's originally from Gatineau and has played 67 games over his 4 seasons in the CFL with the Ticats. And before that, the Toronto Argonauts between 21 and 23. They also signed Deshaun Amos. They've agreed to a contract with him, according to TSN's Farhan Lalji. He was scheduled again to become a free agent February 11th and was ranked 28th in the CFL's top 30 free agents. He's going to his 7th season in the CFL, 3 with the Stamps, 3 with Toronto. He's won 3 Grey Cups, 2018 with Calgary, 2022 and 2024 with Toronto, and has been named the divisional All-CFL team twice in 2019 and 2024. We're sad to see him go. It'll be interesting to see how he slots in with the revamped offense and what's going on in Hamilton.
Yeah, another defender leaves the Argonauts. Boy, they're in a rebuilding phase. Let's finish with the other teams, and we'll talk about the Argonauts. The Stamps signed Franklin.
So Marleshon Franklin Jr. got re-signed. He played 8 games for the Edmonton Elks during the 23 CFL season, and also attended camps with the Lions and Red Blacks. Franklin Jr. made starts at both safety and the SAM position. He recorded 28 tackles and had 1 interception and 2 knockdowns. He first came to Canada in 2019 when he attended training camp with the BC Lions. He signed with the Owls in 2020, but never saw action because of the cancellation of the season due to COVID. After being released by the Elks in 24, Franklin returned to Germany with the ELF's Rhein Fire, and he helped the Fire win the league title and had 6 tackles and an interception in the championship game against the Vienna Vikings.
Absolutely. Riders signed national receiver Marvin Picton.
Yeah, so Picton is back. He was again scheduled to become a free agent on February 11th. He was picked 5th round, 37th overall in the 2017 draft. He played 12 games in 2024, getting 185 yards on 16 receptions and got 2 TDs.
We're going to find out Lemon again in trouble some more, this time gambling, now drugs, illegal drug. He's on a fast track to a problem here. It's too bad.
Yeah, he was suspended for 2 games after testing positive for phentermine. The suspension comes after his appeal was denied. Players, just for those who don't have background on this, players who test positive or fail to provide a sample receive a 2-game suspension for a first violation, a 9-game suspension for a second, a 1-year suspension for a third, and a lifetime ban for a fourth. Lemon is currently serving an indefinite suspension for wagering on CFL games, including one in which he played. The 2-game suspension related to the drug policy violation will take effect should he be reinstated by the commissioner's office if he signs with the CFL clubs. Now, All players are subject to mandatory drug testing following a positive result or failure to provide a sample. They're also required to participate in an assessment and clinical evaluation to determine if additional counseling is required. The policy mandates a total number of league-wide tests equal to the total number of players in the CFL. Testing is ongoing and done year-round.
Absolutely. Well, now about the Argos. They're the team that I cover closely, follow them, go to the games, interview the players during the season, in the off season, whenever we get the opportunity to talk to them. We do. And the Argo defense, the whole front line is gone. Most of them went to Edmonton. So what does that mean? Well, it means, they say winning championships is done through great defense. So they're hurting their opportunity to have championships, obviously. But here's the thing. This organization, I don't know if they'll do it again and again and again, or they'll run out of gas like, Calgary did. But to rebuild this team, I can't see them having anything but a slow start. The Argos are going to have a slow start. They're going to have to work their new guys into the lineup, figure it out how things go, and then basically become a better team as the season moves along. And they've got to hope. And this is the part that if you're an Argo fan and as a reporter reporting on the Argos, for them to be in the playoffs, they can't afford to start too slow. They've got to hope that a team like Ottawa, who has it, maybe doesn't have it, Hamilton, a team that has it, maybe doesn't have it, that these teams start slow as well to give them a chance. Now, I don't know what the chances are of Montreal starting slow. They're a really good team, a really good organization. And so far, it doesn't look like they're going to get hurt as deeply as the Argos are as far as losing players is concerned. That locker room, going to have a lot of strangers in it. There's a lot of cohesion that'll have to develop. And that we know takes time. But knowing the Argos and knowing the way they can find players and the way they've found first-year players that have been very, very good, they've done it before. Here's the thing, though. They've got to do it now everywhere in a lot of places. So that's the thing, that the challenge that the Argos have. They lost an opportunity to bring in a coach that they had as the only defensive coach. He went to Hamilton. So even in the coaching ranks, they have some holes they have to fill. So for the Argos, it's going to be an interesting preseason. And for the Argo fans, it's going to be an interesting early season. It's going to be interesting. So look forward to that. So the Canadian Football League. And I've said on the other shows that I've been on, my biggest thrill covering the Argos is that this year, more than any other year, there really is the truth in saying that no guaranteed playoff spots here this year. Anybody could end up out of the playoffs if the other teams get hot. So it's going to be interesting, to say the least. Canadian Football League season is going to be an interesting one.
Well, the good news is everybody starts at zero. So we all start from the same place. It's where we are after the first 5 to 6 games of the season that's going to be really telling.
Or as we've seen in the past few years, how long you stay at zero. That's not a good thing either. So you gotta win a few. Let's talk about Ovechkin, and he's threatening to do it this year. He only needs another 16 goals.
I think that's what's most amazing to me out of all of this is people had thought that he might be breaking it middle to end of next year. He broke his leg this year and is now currently 16 goals away from breaking Wayne Gretzky's all-time record. That to me is absolutely ludicrous. And when you look at the fact that in the standings, there are still 28 games left in the season. That is plenty of time for him to score 16 goals. I have the feeling that we may see this falling sooner rather than later. You have Ovechkin get a couple good games in there, and this could potentially be falling by around the middle of March.
Absolutely.
So would you be upset if Wayne Gretzky's record fell to a Russian?
It's only hockey.
It's
only hockey. It's just a game. There are some, I guess, who would feel a little taken aback by it. I wouldn't. It's only hockey. It's a game. I think for me, the bandage got torn off the first time, the professional Canadian players lost. That's when the realization, and over the years, we've learned very deeply, without doubt, it doesn't matter which level, Canada does not really dominate for long. They do dominate. The junior, they dominated for a few years. The domination no longer exists for Canada. So if you accept the reality that you're not going to have the best team every year, you're going to have to accept the reality that some of the players that aren't Canadian are going to be holding records that Canadians used to hold when Canadians were 95% of the players in the National Hockey League, because that's what I grew up with. I was 95, maybe even 98%. Where back in the day when you said, are there any Americans? Yeah, there is. Ted Williams, he was the American playing for Boston. So, so it is what it is. Let's talk a little bit about Zhu Guanyu. He joins Ferrari as a reserve driver. Where's he from?
So Zhou Guanyu is actually from China. He was one of the first Chinese racers to ever get a full-time gig. His best finish was 8th, but he brings a lot of money to each team that he goes to. He was driving for Kick Sauber, but he doesn't have a race seat this year after leaving Sauber at the end of last year. Because he's signed with Ferrari as a reserve driver for this season, should Leclerc or Lewis Hamilton be unable to race, Zhou Guanyu would step in. He was a Ferrari Academy driver earlier in his career, so it's good to see him being back with a team that he's already familiar with. He is also one of 2 reserve drivers at Ferrari alongside Antonio Giovinazzi, who last raced F1 in 2021 and is a longtime reserve driver who has yet to drive for Ferrari.
Absolutely.
So happy to see that he's got at least a spot for the coming season. Glad to see China represented on the grid.
Let's talk about the rest of the Canadian teams in the National Hockey. Let's start with the Habs and Fiala. Kind of ruined a game for the Montreal Canadiens, who were looking like they were competing for a playoff spot, but that door and window and garage door and roof is caving in on Montreal now. It's slowly but surely they're eliminating themselves from the race.
Yeah, they've done a spectacular job of shooting themselves in the foot. They are 3-6-1 in their last 10, and unfortunately dropping a 6-3 game to the Los Angeles Kings doesn't help. They finished the night with 60 points and a 28-17-6 record. The problem that we have here is the Kings put together a really solid game. Lafreniere had a good point. Brendan Clark showed up for the Los Angeles Kings, and again, the aforementioned Kevin Fiala with his 2 points really helped.
Absolutely. The Senators lose back-to-back games to the Bolts. They were ahead of the Bolts, and now they're a little bit behind now.
Yeah, they were all the way up in third, and then unfortunately, Tampa Bay now has the tiebreaker over them because they swept this 2-game series. This was a little odd in that the Senators first played them earlier in the week as a second half of back-to-back, got 2 nights off, and then came back and got paddled. Arguably, they did worse.
In Florida, back-to-back in Florida,
and
not
they
back-to-back in Ottawa, then to Tampa.
And they did worse in the second game after 2 days rest than they did in the second half of their back-to-back. But Hagel scored the go-ahead goal for the second consecutive game, and Tampa Bay moved into a tie with Ottawa for third place in the Atlantic Division. Gensel, Point, Mitchell Chafee, and Eric Chernak also scored for Tampa Bay, and Vasilevsky made 27 saves. Michael Amadio scored for Ottawa, and Anton Forsberg stopped 26 of 31 shots.
Absolutely. Talk to me about the Flames, Aaron. Leafs played them. We watched them. They made a trade. The trade's been working fairly well. The new guys are looking good. But they're on the knife's edge as far as the playoffs are concerned.
They are, unfortunately, they are currently sitting just outside the wild card spot, thanks to that loss to Nate the Great and Cale Makar. They are sitting at 59 points behind the Vancouver Canucks at 61, and a solid 7 points behind the Colorado Avalanche, who walked all over them for a 4-2 win. McKinnon has 83 points on 20 goals and in NHL leading 63 assists. They've managed to hop over, leapfrog Leon Draisaitl, and the Avalanche are actually set to play the Oilers on Friday night, so that could be an interesting game. From Calgary, Makar is the first NHL defenseman to reach 20 goals this season. He's the 8th defenseman in NHL history with 3 or more 20-goal campaigns in his first 6 seasons. He joins Paul Coffey, Denis Potvin, Ray Bourque, Bobby Orr, Steve Duchesne, Phil Housley, and Reed Larson. The Flames are the first team to score 5-on-3 in 3 straight games since the Phoenix Coyotes managed that back in January of 2013.
And 2 of those goals were, there were 2 against the Leafs, in fact. Let's talk about the Oilers. They beat the Blackhawks in overtime.
Let's be honest here. I think everybody should be beating the Blackhawks at this point. They are currently sitting with 38 points, 1 up on the San Jose Sharks for second last in the NHL. I am curious as to how they find themselves in that position based on the talent they have on the team, but it just doesn't seem like anything is working for them. McDavid set up Hyman in overtime. Hyman redirected McDavid's pass for the power play goal at 1:36 in overtime. It was Hyman's 19th and McDavid's 49th assist of the season. Draisaitl and Skinner each had a goal and an assist as Edmonton won for the 5th time in 7 games. Victor Arvidsson also scored, and Calvin Pickard, Calder Cup winner with the Toronto Marlies, made 29 saves. Chicago rallied behind Ryan Donato, who matched his career high with his 16th goal at 12-12. He also picked up an assist on Alec Martinez's tying goal with 3:44 left in regulation. It was a good rally for the Hawks after they lost Jason Dickinson to an apparent knee injury 4:33 into the second period. Lucas Reichel also scored for Chicago. This is their 3rd consecutive loss. Arvid Soderblom stopped 34 shots.
Good for them. How about those Canucks? They win in overtime. They beat the Sharks.
Again, like with Chicago, everybody's beating the Sharks. It was a low-scoring, low-event affair. Dakota Joshua and Drew O'Connor scored for the Canucks, while Tyler Toffoli notched a goal for the Sharks. Thatcher Demko continued his great stretch of play. Made 33 saves on 34 shots against. With the Calgary Flames losing to the Colorado Avalanche earlier in the day, Vancouver then got sole possession of the 2nd wild card spot in the Western Conference. Quinn has missed his 3rd game since being shaken up in last week's game against the Dallas Stars. But despite missing their undisputed best player, Vancouver has actually looked solid and continued their steady stretch of play. While they were a little slow in capitalizing on their opportunities, they did well in neutralizing San Jose's chances.
Perfect. I got news for you, Aaron.
Mm-hmm.
And in the business of news, I received my check from the Premier.
Excellent. I got mine today as well. Now, did you have any trouble putting it in, or did you take it to the bank to deposit it?
No, I just opened it before we did the show, and I saw it looked official, and I'm going, okay, is this good news or bad news? And I realized, that the request to vote for him when he gave me that money was something that I thought was a little, no, just kidding. He didn't do that. He didn't do it out loud. It might be something that he's whispering, but I don't think it's something he's doing out loud. It's kind of weird, eh? A couple of days before the election, I got a check from the Premier. I don't know. I know you joke about it being, we're kidding here. I mean, it's an easy go-to gag that he's trying to bribe us. I mean, he did give us $200. I mean, but the question becomes, this should raise attention for people when it comes to the election. We talk about news from time to time. We're going to talk a little bit about it now, folks, and then we'll get off the air. that's an interesting thing when a politician says he's going to send money to people. Now, you use your own. Tell me what you think of the check that you received, and what message does it send to you? Do you think?
Well, so the check is called a rebate, and uh, they're couching it in the paperwork that you get as a compensation for the unjust and unfair carbon tax that the federal liberals and Justin have foisted upon Canada. Um, so they're trying to play on anti-liberal federal government sentiment by sending out these checks. They're trying to couch it in terms that, oh well, we're doing you a huge favor. Look, we're giving you money. Aren't we great? Um, Unfortunately, that entire check has been swallowed by fees that I have to pay my doctor because they've been taking money out of Ontario Health and funneling it towards other things, so that my doctor has been forced to move to a monthly subscription-based system for non-necessary things. We're talking sick notes, renewing prescriptions by mail, completion of certain forms, all of that, because the Ontario government has been cutting healthcare funding, has now been pushed back onto us.
So you got two things. You've got two things going on. The funding's being cut in our healthcare system, and our doctors are trying to figure out how to get that money back, or some of that money back. Is that fair?
Exactly. So that $200 is already gone. It's already been spent on something that, quite frankly, I shouldn't be paying for, because I already pay for.
Does your doctor offer you a fee so that you don't have to pay for those? Is there an annual fee that'll will eliminate? So what's the annual fee for? How much is that?
The annual fee is $220. It covers both myself and the missus.
All right.
So that $200 you came in
check too, right? She got a $200 check.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, so it was either it's either $145 each or $220 per couple.
Yeah.
So one of us pays.
Yeah. So you got $400 from him. You can use some of that for that. It seems kind of. I guess when the government gives away money, and we know where they get their money from us. So now they're giving us money. They're giving us a rebate. Everybody who pays taxes. So people who don't pay taxes didn't get that $200. There's one little thing that sometimes when I think about that taxpayers get these benefits that non-taxpayers don't get. If they did it in a bigger chunk, it would be more interesting, because then non-taxpayers would start to complain about why they're not getting that money. I don't know. I'm trying to think out the box here, Aaron. Like, if the government gave us thousands instead of hundreds because we pay our taxes, that would be a motivation to pay your taxes.
Oh, definitely. I mean, getting a larger rebate
to be included in that group. It's like there's something there that I see could be beneficial to people who play by the rules, who pay their taxes and do what they're supposed to do, or what we can argue about how much government, like right now in the US, what's the big thing that Musk is talking about? He's talking about waste. He's talking about putting programs in the wood chipper, which doesn't sound very friendly. I don't disagree that governments waste money. I don't disagree.
No, not at all. I think what I'm most disappointed, though, in all of this is the politicos that forced Justin Trudeau out cost me another $250, because we were supposed to get another rebate from the Canadian federal government, but thanks to people mucking about in Parliament and contributing to Justin Trudeau's decision to resign, there's another $250 that I won't be getting back from the federal government that should, by all rights, be mine. So, I have an axe to grind with a whole bunch of different people, but at the end of the day, I am satisfied that I got that $200 back from the Ford government, and I've already put it to use.
So. And how Uh, I Trudeau decided to hit back at the U.S. at Trump and his tariffs. What do you think of his tariff plan?
I personally think it's disadvantageous to Canada and hugely hurtful to American prices and the American people. Making everything more expensive for them to buy is
Both
not the way to
ways?
go.
Yeah, are you referring to both ways or just one way?
Well, I'm more looking at this point at the Canadian tariffs that Trump is imposing on Canada.
Okay. See, that's what I want to understand. So you're
Okay,
talking
so I mean, basically, it works like this. Let's say, for example, you sell shirts. Let's say you get those shirts from China for $10 each. You put your stuff on them once you get them here, and you sell them for $20. Your profits are $10 per shirt. With these tariffs that Trump is putting on, in this example, China,
10%.
let's say it's 10%. That shirt is now no longer $10, it's $11. If you continue to sell those shirts at $20, you're only making $9 profit instead of 10. This hurts your bottom line. So as a result, you are forced to raise your price to 22 to say, oh, 25 is a nice round figure. Now, not only has the
In other
pass-through
words, you're
tariff,
saying then make more profit, an
yep,
excuse to I've got another downside to that. Then if the tariffs disappear, do they lower the prices?
of course not. They're already gotten people used to paying higher prices because we've been trained.
So yeah, that's where that's where I was going with what I was trying to get at. So at the end of the day, tariffs are just an arbitrary fee that governments, local governments, are tacking on top of products that come in. Tariffs are like when you go to the U.S. and you bring alcohol with you. If you bring alcohol that isn't included in the, you can bring it in. You know, you get that third bottle, then you got to pay tax on it, and that's essentially what Aaron's describing. That's exactly what's happening. So the question becomes: are you willing to buy that for that extra price? And you know, in some ways, people are used to having certain things, and they're not going to give them up until it really, really hurts. This, and I guess to close this out, how much does this help, do you think, Canadian businesses, manufacturers that make and sell products in Canada? Will it be helpful? Like we have
If
winemakers, we make alcohol.
it's certainly an opportunity for Canadians to expose themselves to more Canadian companies. That is one thing that's for sure. We're already feeling the impacts of that. One of the largest cotton importers in the United States has actually lost a contract with Canada because, according to the Canadian company that was importing their cotton for textiles, they just can't trust the president. So that's another part of the blowback to this entire situation.
Yeah, the fees that are generated, and then I think the biggest thing that came out of this is the negotiation and what it was when Trump said, you know, you got to stop having people come into our country. The accusation basically was migrants were getting into the U.S. Fentanyl was getting into the U.S. And on the other hand, Canada turns around and it's an easy comment. Well, we got news for you. More fentanyl comes in from you where you are. More migrants come to Canada through your country, and most importantly, 30,000 guns. You know, there's guns that come into Canada from the U.S. because of their lax border. You know, that they do. You know, it's raised that profile, Aaron, and I think that was one good thing that came from this.
Yeah, it definitely is. You
Knowledge,
know, yeah,
information.
more people are now aware of the situation. More people are now aware of the potential economic impacts, and having more knowledge is never a bad thing. It's now what you do with it that I think is the most important.
And finally, my last comment is, isn't it nice to hear Americans say, why is Trump picking on those nice people, those nice Canadians? They're such good people. Why do you want to piss them off?
Yeah, it's definitely funny to hear that for sure.
I thought so. Aaron, thanks for doing this, buddy.
Hey, no problems, Frank. We'll see you on Monday.
Okay, he's Aaron William Freeland. I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. If you want to follow us, you can follow the show on YouTube, Candid Frank Stanisci 1030, and you can follow me on all the just Candid Frank Live. Aaron, give them a where they can follow you.
You can follow me on X at L_meathead. You can also follow me on threads.net at L_meathead and on bluesky.app at lmeathead.bsky.social.
Okay, love you, buddy. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Give the wifey a hug. Tell her Frank says hello.
Will do. Thanks,
Later,
Frank.
buddy.